Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is Susan Lopresti, and you are listening to the Susan Lopresti Wellness, Mind, Body, and Soul podcast. It's the podcast that explores practices and techniques to cultivate a more balanced and purposeful life for the mature woman so that she can continue to experience good health and optimal wellness for many years to come. I'm your host, Susan Lopresti, and I have a very special guest with me today, and I'm really excited about this episode. And my guest is Nancy Montier. Did I say your last name correctly? Montier?
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Nancy,
Hi.
thank you so much. I'm so excited to have you here. Nancy is a spiritual seeker, a lover of nature. She's also a life coach, a life partner, and a mother of two. She lives in the foothills of the Sierras of California. She had a health crisis in her late 30s that became a turning point for her towards better health and also a new career. Nancy is, like I mentioned, a life coach. She works with women. She has a wonderful Facebook group, and that's how I met Nancy, actually. It's called Women Over 50. It's Your Turn Now. And I will put the link in the show notes so that you could go and join that group. It's very engaging. Nancy always gives us something to think about, and I just love the conversations that go on in there. So Nancy, welcome. I am so excited to have you here with me today. Thank you very much for being here, taking your time out of your busy day.
Well, thank you, Susan. I'm really delighted to talk about this. I realized when I was thinking about it that I haven't really talked about this story in a very long time, and it's been interesting and healing to revisit it.
I'm happy to hear that. And I could almost guarantee that there'll be listeners here that will really resonate with your story and leave someone feeling like there is hope out there when you're struggling, especially during that time of midlife. Nancy, tell me, you mentioned that you had symptoms that begin in your late 30s. What exactly were you experiencing at that point?
By then, maybe it started in mid-30s as well. By then I was having insomnia. Like I would wake up in the middle of the night after about 4 hours of sleep and couldn't get back to sleep because everything was all revved up. And that ended up, that was years, seems like a decade or more. I was extremely tired and panic attacks and PMS that was off the charts. And I didn't think it was related, but given what I've discovered since then, I'm sure it was very tied in. Mm-hmm. Aching joints, and I was kind of angry and moody at times.
Well, with all of that going on, how could you not be angry and moody? I mean, just insomnia alone, having insomnia will totally screw up so many other areas of your life, because without good rest, it's really difficult to have a productive day and feel energized and motivated and excited when you're like basically dragging yourself along, right?
Yeah.
So that's difficult. When you were going through this, I'm imagining that your kids were still young, right?
They were in like grade school.
Yeah. And were you sharing this with your spouse? Did he know what was going on, or were you holding it in and keeping it to yourself?
No, I was definitely holding it in. I'd have these panic attacks at like 5 a.m. I'd wake up with my heart rushing, and I found out that if I ran up the street, my body would kind of catch up. So I kind of managed it there a little bit. But once my husband caught me in one, and he was like, let's get you some help. He's very gentle and kind. But what was the rest of your question?
So well, you weren't really sharing what was going on, like you weren't reaching out to your girlfriends, you hadn't yet been in touch with a doctor, you were pretty much dealing with it on your own.
Well, I actually was, the doctors didn't help. I went to the doctor, and I ended up with a thyroid diagnosis, a low thyroid, which I thought would help, but it didn't help hardly at all. It didn't help much, so I kept going back. And then I started seeing alternative doctors, and they would prescribe things. I don't remember what they were, but they were like a medicine based on supplements, and they didn't seem to help. Because what I really needed was a major break in this stress pattern, I think. But so I was trying to do it that way. I think I'm pretty sure my husband was aware of it, but not the extent of it.
Right.
When you describe that, I didn't have girlfriends. I was kind of a loner, and that was a big mistake. Or else I had to, like, for some reason I had to hide this because I didn't want people to know I was weak, or I'm the strong one, I'm supposed to take care of people, or whatever that was about. It was kind of like part of being a loner, part of being in a job with all men, and so there's not a lot of camaraderie there for me, and so it was just an isolating, kind of a strange situation. So it was not conducive to health at all, along with being working full time, having kids, and having a husband that traveled a lot. So the kids were, and everything was just, was in my court to be the main person, and that's taking responsibility. I'm the martyr. I was the martyr person,
Right.
So I did. Yeah.
Do you think that was maybe the trigger, feeling that you had so much responsibility? Because you haven't talked about your job yet. And I know that you were in a very stressful job. So do you think that and everything else combined, raising two young children, your husband being on the road a lot, working, being in a man's environment? So, it's interesting because when I went back to work, my daughter was only about 3 months old. And, you're mostly with men. So when you have to call in sick that your child doesn't feel well and stuff like that, it's such a bad feeling, right? And that adds a lot of stress. And I'm sure because you said you didn't have many girlfriends and your husband worked on the road a lot, so all of that was falling on your shoulders. And do you think that stress was a trigger for maybe your anxiety? And
yeah, I think the stress, contributed to not being able to sleep, and the panic attacks. I don't understand why they happen. I never looked it up, but it seems like they're a result of the body just in overdrive. And what turned out to be what I called chronic fatigue was another result of stress. It's how women tend to relate to stress, is get onto autoimmune diseases.
yes.
Yeah.
That's when I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's disease. I was in my, I don't know, early to mid 40s, and I was under tremendous stress. I was working a full-time job in Manhattan, raising a daughter. My marriage was on the rocks, let's say that. It was very stressful. And energetically, when you have a thyroid condition, it has to do with you not speaking your truth or saying what you want to say. You're holding back. And I know for me, that was true in my marriage. I held back because saying my truth or speaking up meant that there was going to be a major fight in the house. And so to avoid and to keep peace, I kept my mouth shut. And they say that it manifests as a thyroid condition. So I'm sure in some way, your illnesses and your symptoms were a result of stress as well, that then manifest into a physical disease.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think I'm sure of it, because when I reduced all the stress and did some self-care, it dissipated.
Right. So the driving force was definitely the stress, I'm sure, raising two kids and all that. So you did mention supplements. Did any of the doctors put you on any kind of medication for your stress or anxiety? Did you go on a prescription med?
Went on Prozac very reluctantly. Oh my God, I was so reluctant because I have two sisters that are mentally ill, and I was terrified of going down that path of having to deal with that, with those kinds of drugs for a lifetime. But he put me on a very tiny dose, like a child's dose, and it was meant to help with the PMS because it was really off the charts. It did. It helped. It sort of helped take the edge off some of the symptoms, but I really didn't want to be on it. So I weaned myself off in less than a year, but it gave me enough of an edge to be able to calm down enough to begin to start looking at other things and looking at how to heal this. Otherwise, there were no other supplements. The Western medicine didn't, just doesn't do supplements.
No. So what was one significant change that you made in your life that you think had a dramatic effect on improving your health?
Two. I'm going to give you two. One of them, quitting my job. One of them was like finally letting myself get out of that job. And years later, I used to threaten my kids, I'll go back to computers if you don't comply. And I know it's so, I'm sure it affected everybody,
Yes. Don't bring that lunatic back in the house.
A healer that turned out to use Chinese acupressure for healing and massage. And I walked in and I was skeptical because I'm like a Western medicine person. That kind of is my heritage. My mom, my dad's a scientist. So I don't know anything about this energy thing, but I've kind of exhausted the Western medicine solution. And they had the kind of an attitude that seemed to me, they weren't saying this out loud, but they said, chill, lady, you've got 2 kids, you're working a full-time job, just, you're going to be tired. And it just seemed like my tired was way beyond what that meant. But, it's hard to tell. It's hard for anybody to get in anybody's body and tell what's going on. So
I had that reaction with one of my doctors as well before I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. And he said, it's normal. You're in your 40s. You're supposed to feel like this. You're supposed to have aches and pains. And of course, you're going through perimenopause. It's natural. And I kept thinking about my mom. I was like, I don't ever remember my mom suffering like this, And so, yeah, they didn't talk food or any other lifestyle, like what's going on in your life? Let's break it down. Let's see why you're so stressed out. So what did you do at that point when you weren't happy with Western medicine?
Like I did turn to Qigong and finally quitting my job, and with the full support of my husband. He said, I'd rather lose the house than lose you. And I went, all right, I have no more excuses to go through that fear of changing identities and letting go of a career that I'd spent a lot of money on, and my parents had spent money on to educate me and all that stuff. So,
right.
Shame and guilt and, oh my Lord, all that
failure.
stuff.
Did you see yourself maybe as a failure or disappointed in yourself in some way?
Yeah. You want to follow in the footsteps for me, it was my dad. He was a very successful scientist, right? And woman holding down the fort behind him.
Right.
Oh my God, did he? And I realized that I was holding down the fort for my husband just because it's kind of enculturated in my bones, and I think in women's bones.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but he was, we're going to work this out. So I quit my job and I did the Qigong, and I did that. It was Chinese acupressure that was based on Chinese healing, based on the meridians and acupressure points, but he did it with touching rather than needles like acupuncture.
So just a little bit of pressure down on the meridians?
Like he would use 2 hands and he'd touch 2 points, like maybe one here and one here.
Yes.
And it just gets the energy to shift. I think he's just tuning in, emotionally, energetically, he's tuning in to what's going on. He can feel it. He can look at you, look at your tongue or look at your posture or feel your back and just feel where the energy's stuck. And so, I went to some sessions that were almost spiritual. I was off in this, this cloud, and I heard voices. It was
really.
yeah, it was really powerful. So I kept going back, and then he actually, I found my book that he sold me because he had a bookstore.
Oh,
That I said, how can I do this? How can I do this and keep myself together in between appointments? Because it would, it would fade, kind of like a chiropractic adjustment might fade. And that's what he gave me. He said he doesn't teach it anymore, but to try that. So I taught myself
Qigong. So,
Qigong.
so tell me about Qigong, what it's all about, and how do you think it helped?
Um, well, it basically frees up energy and just builds energy, unblocks it. It's like I got a picture of a river flowing through. A river is alive and it's got a lot of energy and flow and motion. But a pond that has no water flowing in and out is dying, is stagnant. And so I got a sense of that. It just flushes out the meridians and it gets all the energy flowing in the right direction. And it's something that no medicine can do for you.
Right.
And essentially no food can do it. Maybe in some ways it can do it, but it's sort of like using your mind and your body and your breathing and your postures because the Chinese had figured out all kinds of ways that the energy flowed through the body, and they were really studied it very carefully, and to shift, to move your energy. And you practicing that every day just builds up your inner strength. And so I was having my healer guy do it on his table, and then I was doing it on my own. And I did it for, twice a day, 20 minutes a day for at least 10 years. And then I got a little more lax once I felt, recovered. But now I've gotten back into it with at least once a day. And especially after I had COVID, I thought, I should get back into this to help me heal from COVID. And I don't know exactly if it did anything or not, because who knows what it would have done, who I would have been if I hadn't done it.
Right. Right.
I just did it a little bit. I got the sense of 5 minutes while I was sick to do 5 minutes.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I am a Reiki practitioner. So basically, I'm also moving energy of someone, and removing blockages. Today on my podcast, the episode that's being published today, I'm talking about tapping or emotional freedom technique, which basically is the same thing. You're tapping on your meridians and you're also you're talking about the issue that you're looking to, like limiting beliefs, whatever it is individually for everyone. But basically, it's the same concept so acupuncture uses the needles, but it's all about us being energetic, and getting these blockages. And the blockages probably are, a lot of them are emotional blockages, I'm sure, that then manifest into a physical illness if not addressed.
Well,
So
those old limiting beliefs that you might tap out definitely would create a emotional blockage, especially over time. And then they create a blockage for just being able to make things happen in the world, right?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I like to go walking, and I haven't walked in 2 weeks because of the weather and I'm busy and whatever. And I just get like a different feeling because I feel like even being outside walking, any kind of movement of your body or being in nature just seems to open you up and just make you feel better. And I think just moving our body, flowing in some way, shape, or form helps to keep the energy flowing and moving, just like feng shui with your home, right? The placement of the objects in your home to allow the energy to flow where it needs to flow. It's all the same concept, and it's just incredible because, when you think about it, it sounds so simple, but yet sometimes illness seems very complicated, but yet you were able to really heal yourself.
Yes, over time, we're so used to Western medicine and the concept of, do something take a pill and it's done. And it took a long time to get into this condition, and it takes some time to heal it. But the benefits of that are, I think, are huge, to be able to do it from the inside out. And if the Prozac helped a little, and it was the best I could at the time. And I'm just really glad that I decided to take another route. But I don't, if you need what you need, I'm not putting that down. My sisters are on these medicines, and it's important for them to have a halfway normal life that way. And maybe they could have done something natural, but maybe they couldn't. Who knows?
Right.
I just think and I totally get it this form of Qigong that I do, and there's a lot of different forms, is called Zhengjung, which is called standing like a tree. And you're actually not moving hardly at all. You're just holding a position for up to 20 minutes or an hour or something. I do them for like 5 or so minutes, and then the whole movement happens inside. The whole movement is through your body and your breath and your mind, and the position where it's just happening inside. And it's just really amazing. You can, as Reiki, you would know how to feel the energy moving. But it's outside. They recommend doing it outside with the trees all the time. They recommend, this is about standing like a tree with your feet in the earth and your arms and your hands in the sky, and connecting heaven and earth. So there's a spiritual aspect to it that I love, and a meditation. They also call it a standing meditation. So it's a lot of bennies.
Well, I see a lot of people practicing. When I was working in the city, Bryant Park is a big park on 6th Avenue. I used to ride past there on the bus, and every morning there'd be a big group of people out there all moving. It looked like Qigong to me. It could have been Tai Chi, which is another type of exercise as well. But also where I live, I have a lot of big parks, and I see a lot of people in the parks there doing it as well. But I never made that connection that you should be doing it outside. I just thought that they got together outside because the weather was nice. Yes.
Your emotional, mental outlook. And I was saying, these people that have done this for 4,000 years agree with you.
Yes. So there really is something to be said for traditional Chinese medicine and all of that that's been around for thousands of years. And, I won't say that Western medicine is bad. It's not bad. It's great if you need any kind of an organ transplant, or you're in a car accident or anything major. But when it comes to chronic illnesses or conditions like that, they're very dismissive. Like, you're fine. Here's a pill, take Prozac. They don't ever speak to you about your lifestyle, what's going on in your life. How's your marriage? How are your children? How's your work life? They rush you in and out. And when I go to my functional medicine doctor, I'm in her office for over an hour. And we just talk about everything in my life that's going on, plus my test results and what she's suggesting that I do. And she never suggests taking prescription meds. Like if my cholesterol is running high, it's all about my diet. You're not eating right and you're not exercising enough, so you need to switch that up. And I do. And when I take my blood again, there's a major improvement in it. But it's something that you have to work at, where with a prescription drug, you just take it and then you think you could eat a gallon of ice cream and you're fine, so it's different. It really is. So tell me about the group that you created on Facebook, and what are most of your clients that you work with? What are they coming to you for? So that, because you're a life coach and I'm a health coach, so we're two different types of coaches. So who comes to you and what are they coming to you for? Talk about that for a minute.
I said in my intro that, or you said in my intro that I changed my career. And So I just wanted to say that this health crisis shifted my life so that I did better at managing my health as much as I knew. I could have done even better looking back, but I did as much as I knew how to do, as far as, lots of fruits and vegetables and things like that. But I still use food as a crutch, as an emotional release thing. So I got better at that, and then I changed careers, and I hired a coach to help me change careers. And it was such a profound process to be seen and witnessed and championed in a way I'd never experienced with anybody in my life, parents, teachers, friends, or anything, because it's kind of a unique thing. So I decided I would try out coaching and learn to be a coach. So I did that. I've been doing that about 20 years. And the people in my group, see, I'm kind of coming from my place of healing in my health, to go, okay, women over 50, it's your turn now. It's time to take your turn. It's time to take your health back, your life back, have your dreams. A lot of them don't even know, like, they're so used to taking care of others, they have guilt for thinking about themselves, or they don't know what to do. They just don't know. And I get it. If I'm not taking care of somebody, who am I? What do I do? So it's a transition process. And so I work with people one-on-one right now. I'm going to be designing a group, I think, and doing the groups, but
like a membership or something? Is that
more like a program, a program.
Oh.
You have to pay for a 3-month program or something like that. And that's what I do. Lots of women have lost their creativity, and they're getting themselves permission to bring that back. One woman is painting dogs, people's pets, after having left her art career 30 years ago.
Wow.
It's pretty cool.
I think that midlife, or even older than midlife, like when your kids are grown and they're on their own, and so now it's you and your husband, let's say, and your whole dynamic is changing, and women are so used to being the nurturer, right, and taking care of your kids, and we're instilled from when we're little girls, where we're playing with dolls, we're feeding them. That's the way we grow up, just being the mommy to everyone. So it's really uncomfortable for a lot of women if that's the only thing that defined them for, let's say, 20 years while they were raising their kids. And now they find themselves, their kids are independent, they're working, they're out on their own. And now you look at you and your husband and you're like, okay, so now what do we do? So
the old empty nest syndrome, right?
Yes. So I would imagine that a lot of women, for me, I always knew that the job that I had was not what I was meant to be doing. I mean, I was an analyst, and I'm not an analyst. I don't even like numbers. I went to fashion school, and somehow after my daughter was born, I ended up in corporate America, and I just landed in this position, and the money was right and the company was good, and I just stayed, but it wasn't what I wanted. So when I was let go from my job, I knew exactly where I wanted to go. But a lot of women don't know that. Like, I knew I was more of a people person. I was very much always into health and wellness and working out and, trying new healing modalities. So going into health coaching for me just felt natural. But a lot of women don't know what that second act looks like, and they're just left with, now what? So I would imagine that you could be in very high demand for women in that age group.
Yeah, especially
Need guidance.
in that big transition period of letting the kids go or letting a job go. Yeah, that's a challenge. It's a big piece. It's a big piece of life. And, as we age and stuff, there's so much that happens physically. We're losing some sort of, some of our physical strength and mental strength and hearing and things. Things just keep happening, and friends. It's awesome to be able to have a chance to process that, or to allow it to be a bigger part of your life, a bigger part, not something that it's just not talked about. Old people are not talked about, or this whole thing is just not talked about, but it's a big deal.
Right. Yes. You have to talk with someone who can totally identify what it is that you're going through. So, like, to tell your husband that you're having these feelings, I mean, he can't relate to that. He was never the nurturer, he's the breadwinner. It's hard. Some men are more understanding than others, and he may get it on some level, but he really can't connect it the way you would with another woman who's going through the same exact thing or has been where you are now. So that it must be a great feeling for you as a life coach to be able to help women and to see them progress and feel more positive about the future, because I find women feel very negative about this time of life, like it's the end of their life. And I don't feel like that. I feel like it's the better part of my life right now.
I hope to convert a lot of women from feeling a little bit of pessimism to a lot of optimism, and there's a lot of ways to do it. I'm thinking of one woman that we just shifted her own sense of power and strength. She had been dealing with this problem for a very long time, for a year and a half, a financial issue. And then once she shifted and brought power into herself, she started looking at her life in a different way and ended up solving that financial problem. And it opened up this ton of freedom for her to be able to change her life in all kinds of ways. And it was just like, it's amazing once we shift and gather up our power.
Yeah.
We can start carving a way into a life that's much more what we want to be, much more like where we were when we were 8, 9, 10, 12, and we wanted to take on the world.
I find for me, I mean, besides being a young child where I had freedom and everything was about fun and games and, what we're going to do next, I feel like this is the best time of my life. It's more about me and less about taking care of others, which was, when you're raising kids, it's about taking care of them. And I just feel very positive and excited, but I also feel good. And I think that's a key component. So once you're physically healed, then you can start really healing emotionally, because when you're feeling like crap, basically, it's hard to feel excited about the future, because you're seeing it as, well, if I feel like this today, how am I going to feel 5 years from now? So I think a key component is you need to physically get well. And sometimes it takes an alternative, like you are talking about Qi Gong, to make that transition back to better health.
Yeah. And, you pointed to something earlier in the talk that I think a part of the transition is connecting with people. I think we need, especially women, we need friendships. We need deep connections, trusting to just belong. I think that's important for women.
Yes.
Build each other's energies up. And I think women can do that for each other.
Yes, without a doubt. And I know for a fact, because I have some friends of mine whose parents, during COVID, when everyone was isolated, I see it with my mom, but she was still social. But I have friends of mine that their parents were really isolated, especially if their spouse has passed away and they're totally alone. Their mental capacity really declined in that amount of time. Like, you saw a downward spiral in their health physically and their mental capacity. They're a little bit not as sharp and a little bit more depressed. I see in my girlfriend's moms, we talk about it a lot because our moms are the same age. So yeah, community is a really big part of staying connected, but you need to be connected in community with like-minded people
Yeah,
that
with people that
live
are
to,
going to see
yeah,
you and support you. Yes, you need to
yeah,
be healthy. You need to be connected. There's just a few pieces, I think. Healthy, as healthy as you can be, and connected to others, and moving in a direction, slowly or big, that empowers you, like
right,
writing your book or doing paintings or running a health coaching profession. You just
right. So Nancy, final thoughts, like someone who's on here listening and she's saying, yeah, that sounds like me. I'm having anxiety and I'm feeling, like this. What's your advice for a woman who's starting to go through this? What would you say?
I think one piece of advice is to trust your intuition, to trust your own knowing. And if you are feeling like doing it a natural healing solution, go for that. If your intuition is that you need medical help, go for that. But make sure it's yours. You're trusting and not just looking at outside sources. And there may be I suspect there's a combination for some people, but I
Yeah.
really feel like there's always, food is so important. Food is medicine, and it's so important. So it's trust your instinct, intuition, and don't make yourself wrong, whatever you choose. And then one of the things that might have helped me even more, they didn't really exist then, but the idea of having a health coach that was outside of the medical industry. I guess my healer,
Yes.
was him. He would talk about spiritual kinds of things and mindset kinds of things for me, and show me extra exercises if things are hurting. So, but I think that somebody that can help you directly with food and with exercise is, I think, looking back, that's what I advised my younger person that was coping,
Yeah.
that didn't know the answers until she got to the other side. I guess I believe in coaching, but I think doing it in a partnership is so powerful, because a partner can see beyond where you are and see
Yes.
beyond where you are, because they have faith. They've seen it in themselves and others, that you too can get through this.
Right. Right.
I
And
think
you still see that you still go for acupressure with the same gentleman that you met 30 years
30
ago or
years
so?
ago, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I go once a month or 6 weeks or so. Now that I've moved away, it's a little less often, but
Right.
it's more often, it's a great friendship too we've developed.
Yes.
Great.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So Nancy, tell me, any of my listeners who wants to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
To look me up on Facebook. Just
The link that you gave me, I'll put in the
I gave
notes.
you is my group, and there's a business page that might be helpful too. But I think I can give you that other link too.
Okay.
But I haven't put up a website because it just seemed like I didn't have to maintain too many sites.
No, I know.
Talk and do other things.
Because I think your group is wonderful. I love your posts that you put up. So many of them are really thought-provoking, or just like an aha moment you get from reading what you wrote. So there may be some women that are listening on here that would want to join your group. So I'll definitely put that in the show notes so that they could join from there.
That would be wonderful. I'd welcome them. That'd be great.
Nancy, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you in the group.